everyone. I'm Juliana Cusack from the WIN team that is here representing the Truth and Reconciliation team. And I'm so glad to kick off this session with Kiara Windrider, who will be leading the session on Ilahinoor and Supramental descent. And a brief introduction of Kiara. He is an author, healer, and therapist. He's trained in various forms of body work, breath work, hypnotherapy, shamanic healing. He's an author of many books, and he's currently focused on planetary healing, which we'll hear a lot more about today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kiara. But one last thought that is, if you could stay on mute while you're not speaking, just to cut out any extra background noise. Most people know how to do that by now, but if you don't, it's on the top of your screen if there's a slide share, and otherwise it's at the bottom of your screen. So if you can take a moment to make sure you know how to turn on and off your audio, that's great. And with that, I will pass it off to Kiara.
All right, well, hey everybody. So welcome to our event tonight. And I see a lot of people that I know, so welcome to Lisa, Francesca, Rina, Vidya, Mickey, Suman, and then all the ones that, Connie, and all the ones that I haven't met, but we're here all on this earth by divine fiat, and we have specific purpose, and we're here to create something together. And so hopefully this event can be part of awakening to what that purpose might be, and how we can actually support each other and support this earth, support Gaia in this great work. So you're all welcome to ask any questions you want at any point. You can write something in the chat room. If you need to say something at any point, you can also just raise your hand and then unmute yourself, and then we can participate that way. So my preference for this would be to be as interactive, as participatory as possible. So it's your questions, your feedback, your experiences that make this real. So maybe I'll just start with a few words. So the theme is Ilahinur and Supramental descent. And I know those words are not necessarily very familiar to many people. So I'll just start with defining what that actually means. Many of you who are familiar with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, just let me know if you're not, and then I can share some more words about who they are, what their work has been about. Nilima and I met around Sri Aurobindo, just the teachings and the practices and sharing of what this work is about. And essentially, what it's about is to bring a certain quality of unified light into the earth and into our bodies, into the collective consciousness of humanity, and also into the deep unconscious, which is a very creative space. So we think of the unconscious as something that we don't necessarily want to enter because it may be scary or unknown, but really it's a void, it's a womb of creation. And if we can bring this higher field, this higher frequency of light into that space, we can participate in a new kind of birthing. So in past ages, a lot of our spiritual endeavors have been around ascension, have been around lifting up, about opening up the crown chakra and opening up to extra dimensional spaces, to enter into that unit of consciousness, to experience yourself as the universe, the I am presence. And now it's not that that's any less important, but part of our work now in this age is to also bring the opposite quality of light in. So we're not just raising ourselves into divine consciousness, but we're bringing divine consciousness through our bodies into the body of the earth, into a DNA, into the collective consciousness, into the creation of what's often called Homo luminous, the new species of humanity, or Gaia luminous, which is a new chapter, a new incarnation of Mother Earth. So if we recognize that Earth is not just a physical body, but it's a consciousness that's alive, intelligent, and self-aware. And we're all part of that. So in many traditions, she's referred to as the Earth Mother or Gaia, Parvati. There's many different names for this being. And she's an aspect of the Cosmic Mother, the Great Mother, in and within creation, as we are. Our bodies are an aspect of the Divine Mother. And if we can join our consciousness with the consciousness of the earth, we enter into that unit of space as a reflection of the Divine Mother in the act of creation, of a new incarnation, of a new evolutionary pathway. And that's what we're here for. Whatever our personal stories may be, a personal evolution may be about a soul's journey, we're also here to participate in this great evolution. And this is really key. This is something that takes place in cycles. So these are generally approximately 12,000 year cycles. And what I mean by this is that just as we incarnate, we step into bodies, we experience a lifetime, we gather experiences, and then we leave this incarnation, we go back into higher dimensional worlds, experience those worlds for a while, and then reincarnate, re-enter into this realm to gather more experiences. It's a constant journey. And for us, maybe that journey takes, anywhere from 50, 60, 70, 80 years, or a little bit more for some. For the Earth, these cycles move in about 12,000 year cycles. And what does that mean? These cycles are all coordinated with cycles within the sun, cycles within our mother galaxy, cosmic cycles that span far beyond our current galactic awareness. It's like the breath, it's like the heartbeat of the earth, which is coordinated with the sun, with the galaxy, with multidimensional spaces. So every 12,000 years or so, there's an impulse of light that comes in from the galactic center. Some physicists refer to this as a galactic superwave. And it's packets of information, galactic information, high dimensional awareness that's carried on oceans of plasma, what are known as galactic cosmic rays. They combine with plasma emanating from the sun, solar cosmic rays, and move through the atmosphere and body of the earth. And every 12,000 years, these cosmic rays gather a certain momentum. It's a physical phenomenon which has a spiritual component to it as well. So to the extent that we are open, we can receive this information, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, through our bodies, into the body of the earth, into our own subconscious, to awaken, to purify, and to evolve. So what happens every 12,000 years is there's major emanations of galactic energy. Excuse me, but as this enters into our solar system, it activates a cycle of the sun. At a certain point, there's massive emissions from the sun known as coronal mass ejections. They enter into the Earth's atmosphere through the Van Allen belts. They enter into the magnetic fields of the Earth. This has been going on for some time. And what's happening on this Earth right now in terms of magnetism, in the last 200 years or so, the Earth's magnetic field has been gradually and exponentially weakening. Plus, the actual magnetic axis of the Earth has been tilting. So it's no longer in the original axis that it used to be. The magnetic axis has been shifting quite remarkably. It's like, maybe 50, 60 kilometers every single year to a new position. And as this continues, at a certain point, when it reaches a certain latitude around 80 degrees north and south, there's a very rapid exponential collapse of the magnetic fields. And at the same time, there's a shift of the magnetic axis. There's a creation of a new magnetic axis, which may be at either 90 degrees or 180 degrees of its original. And in that process of magnetic excursion or reversal, as it's called, there's a complete reorientation of who we are. Now, how does this happen? Why does this happen? Who we are as humans is very multidimensional. We experience ourselves in physical bodies. The physical body is linked to an emotional body and a mental body through the prana or etheric body. These four bodies act in concert with each other. And this is how we experience humanness. This is how we experience our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. This is how memories register in the mental emotional field. This mental emotional field actually imprints into what's called the Akashic records of the earth, or the Akashic records of our own soul, which in turn is linked with Akashic records that extend further and further out. So Akashic means ether or plasma. So every single thought, feeling, action is imprinted within these ethers. And these ether fields interconnect across the universe. So there's a theory called the electric universe theory, which is now becoming more and more prominent and beginning to replace some of the older theories about physical laws and multidimensional realities. And it's very much more similar to how mystics and rishis, adepts and avatars in the past have experienced this world. That is not just a single dimension of time and space. It's multiple dimensions, multiple worlds that overlap each other, that feed off each other, that are intersected and interconnected. So these four bodies that I'm talking about, the physical, etheric, mental, and emotional bodies, they are linked together in every human incarnation through the magnetic field of the earth, right? So a sense of stability, a sense of purpose, a sense of humanness is derived from this connectedness between the bodies operating through the Earth's magnetic field. Now, the Earth's magnetic field has already dropped about 20 to 25% in the last 200 years, and it's happening exponentially. So maybe at first it's maybe 10% drop in 100 years, and then another 10% drop in the next 100 years. And then it takes only a decade for another 5 or 10% decrease. And this is exponential. So within the next 10, 20 years, many physicists, many people who've been studying these cycles say that we'll be experiencing most likely a magnetic reversal or excursion. An excursion is where there's a 90-degree shift. A reversal is when there's a 180-degree shift. At this moment, it looks more likely that we'll go through a 90-degree shift, and then perhaps later, in a few hundred years, complete that cycle. But essentially what this means is that the next 2 decades, we'll be seeing a complete reorientation of our own identity, of who we experience ourselves as being, as human. And not just one species, we're talking about the entire planet experiencing this. Every single time in the past that we've gone through these magnetic excursions or reversals, which happens like clockwork every 12,000 years, plus or minus a few hundred years. Every single time there's an extinction event where many, many millions of species vanish, and a creation event where a whole profusion of new species comes into being. We are in that transition point now. Many species have already vanished. And of course, humans have had a hand in this, but nothing can happen unless it's Gaia's choice. The next phase of this event is the proliferation of new species and of DNA activation within individual species, including our human species. How does this happen? As these cosmic rays bombard the Earth's atmosphere, the galactic and solar cosmic rays, as well as ultraviolet rays pouring in through the weakened magnetic field, what happens is that these are radiation causing energies. And what happens when there's increased radiation? There's mutations. And when these mutations are haphazard, it can be dangerous and destructive. When these mutations are under the guidance of a living intelligence, such as Gaia, such as our galactic mother, then the same cosmic ray energies can be used to create infinitely new varieties of species. And within the human species, it has the potential of activating new DNA, new potentials. So everything that we've dreamed of, everything that we can imagine, everything that our souls have come in with a purpose for, that intention then creates new potentials. So back to what we were saying earlier about the supramental light, the supramental descent. So this descent of light enters into our universe from beyond time and space, beyond the physical, beyond the multidimensional worlds that we call our universe. So they enter from that space of infinite consciousness, which the Hindus refer to as the self. It's the one self that moves through all things, that is all things, that creates all things, that experiences all things. Is within and beyond. There's no opposites within this self. There's multiple dimensions coexisting, multiple realities. And this is all simply what's called the Leela, the play of the divine. That unified consciousness, that divine light, as it enters into creation, as it enters into time and space and creates worlds and dimensions. There's cycles and there's new creation that's continuous. Creation did not just happen once at the Big Bang. It's a continuous process, and it takes place from the centers of galaxies, and it takes place through these 12,000-year cycles. So what we're experiencing now with the magnetic reversal that's upon us through the solar radiation, the galactic radiation that's entering, and through what's likely to be a solar event, which could be quite massive, is that there's new incarnational possibilities for Gaia herself. And we are called to participate in that. As this happens, the vibrational frequency of this earth goes through a tremendous change. And what we call third dimensional reality or third density falls away, to be replaced by a much higher frequency of light, where the physical form is no longer bound within this reality of time and space. In other words, the physical bodies have the capacity to move around much more freely, to experience multiple dimensions. Our senses are much wider, much more perceptive. We can, at the moment, we experience 5 basic senses, right? We have visual sense, which operates in a certain range from red to violet. We have the auditory range from about 20 to 20,000 hertz. We have our ability to feel things, taste, smell. All these senses have a very narrow range. Every species on Earth has a different range. What shamans are able to do is to experience a different range of perception by entering into the consciousness of a different species. So you watch a butterfly fluttering past. You enter into the consciousness of that butterfly. You experience the world through the eyes of that butterfly, through the senses of that butterfly. Next moment, there's a dog that strolls by, and you experience the world through the eyes, through the senses of that particular species, and so on and so on and so on. You come into relationship with whatever it is that you're encountering. It could be another human, that you're experiencing that person as they are from within themselves, not as you think they are from your perception, which is a very different thing. So once we begin to open up our senses, once we begin to experience Gaia as a single consciousness, once we begin to experience the universe as a multi-dimensional creation, which is me, it's all me, the self, then this whole idea, this illusion of separation and duality falls away. So this is our journey now, and this is the promise that we are given for this time. We are entering into a cycle of Gaia, where Gaia has invited highly advanced souls from across the galaxy to participate in this journey, knowing that it's not going to be easy, because we're dealing with so much conditioning, so much collective hypnosis, the illusion, the matrix of separation, of what we call duality, which is this dividing of the world in terms of good and evil, in terms of right and wrong, in terms of dark and light, and then identifying with one and denying and judging the other. So this is a very pivotal point And as we come out of duality into an experience of oneness, we enter into Gaia consciousness. Then we participate with her in this new evolution, in this new incarnation, um, which is an incredible experience. And we can begin to have glimpses of this. Okay, there's a question here from Rena. Will other species also be opening their senses? For instance, will a dog be able to experience something through the human senses? Absolutely. In fact, they already do. You might notice that when an animal is domesticated, or in other words, when they spend a lot of time around humans, they pick up human characteristics. They even pick up human density. So if their pet, which is the human owner, happens to have cancer, that animal will pick up that tendency, the miasm that give rise to the imbalance known as cancer. They'll pick it up into their body in order to attempt to transmute that. They will also begin to see the world as we see it. A wild creature is very different from a domesticated creature. So if you look at a lion in the wilderness, in the jungle, and a lion in the zoo, over time, the caged lion will develop different characteristics which are closer to human characteristics. For good or bad, that's not the issue here. But the issue is that all species are learning from each other. They're all merging consciousness. And Gaia, as a living consciousness, representing the soul of the earth and the body of the earth together, is the sum total of every species that's ever lived upon this earth. So her consciousness continually changes depending on what's going on within her field. As the numbers of humans on this earth what's the word for it? Expand. We happen to be part of her nervous system. So every species has a role to play within the body, the organism of Gaia. Our role is to be part of her nervous system, the left brain of the earth. So part of what we are doing, along with the whales and the dolphins, who are the right brain, is we are the communication networks. We link up different species, we link up different dimensions, we link up different worlds. So we connect our physical planet with the sun, with the galaxy, with multi-worlds around us. We receive impressions and transmit them. We open to new galactic information as far as the possibility of new mutations, positive mutations, new species. And we open to galactic species that have been working with humanity for a very long time, but are becoming increasingly more present and more communicative. So yes, this is a very exciting time. And if we can participate in this consciously, there's no limits. Absolutely none. The only limits are the limits that we experience, that we create through the structures of the mind. And because the structure of the mind is so locked into duality, into rational thought, that is a limiting structure. It's like, a horse with blinders. You only see what's directly ahead of you, and what's out there is invisible. And we're learning now to to see more clearly, to feel more positively, to experience more richly. Minku is asking, what's a good way to immerse deeper and accentuate this higher galactic consciousness? Beautiful. All right, so that takes us to our theme today, Ilahinur and the supramental descent. So there are ways, very simple, very practical, and very powerful ways that we can receive this light through our bodies and enter into this galactic consciousness. So let me go back to a couplet from the Persian poet or Turkish poet, depending on which part of his life we're talking about, Jalaluddin Rumi, or Mevlana, as he is known in Turkey. He talks about 3 stages of awakening. The first stage is when you're experiencing yourself as separate. So you're a drop, one single drop in this great big ocean, and you're moving towards the oneness. You're seeking, you're thirsting, you're in the process of awakening, you're on a journey. Eventually you merge with the ocean, you reach this awareness of who you are, which is sometimes known as enlightenment, and you experience thereby that you're not separate from the universe, that all your thoughts, feelings, all your physical sensations are linked with the universal consciousness. Every single step you take on your journey is part of a greater journey that the entire universe participates in. So that's the next step. That's the next stage. And then the third stage that he talks about, which is very important. And this is something that we don't normally think about, is when the ocean enters into the drop. So it's not just a drop entering the ocean, it's the ocean entering in the drop. Universal consciousness descending into form. This is a supramental descent, descending all the way through the multidimensional self that we consider human, into the body of the earth, into the living consciousness of the earth. So, when we enter deeper and deeper into the layers of the earth, we're also entering different dimensions. Closer to the surface, we are still in the physical dimension. Then we step into the etheric, the astral, the causal worlds. So by the time we actually get to the center of the earth, we're in a different vibration frequency, and we connect with the soul of Gaia. So as we allow this higher galactic frequency to enter through our bodies all the way down into the earth, we're entering and connecting with the soul of the earth. This is the downward movement. This is the ocean entering the drop. That's so important. This is the descent. So in many spiritual traditions, we've been talking about ascension, which is great. It's about a vibrational upliftment. But now we're talking also about descension, involution, spirit completely entering into and manifesting as physical reality. So in other words, the laws of physics at that point have changed. We're no longer stuck in a Newtonian world or Euclidean geometry. We're experiencing quantum reality. And what this means is that, when you're talking about quantum reality on a subatomic level, is one thing. But when you're talking about quantum reality on a macro level, it's something else. It means you can pick up your body and move in time and space just like that. This is what masters have been known to accomplish. This is what many of us have been learning, not just the so-called masters, but ordinary people, because this is a time for mastery. This is a time that these gifts and abilities and potentials are becoming more and more available. It's because of this oceanic consciousness entering into form. It's because of this supramental field beyond time and space, entering into time and space, entering into Maya, the great illusion. When I say illusion, I'm not denigrating this creation, but I'm actually lifting physical creation into its highest potential. So it's a beautiful illusion. You know, you watch a movie, you know it's an illusion, you know it's happening on a screen in front of you, but you participate in it. You experience emotions. You're touched on a deep level. You move through the journey of the hero or the heroine. You know, it's the hero's journey, and you're participating in it, even though you know it's an illusion. And it's the same with this illusion that we call creation. It's an illusion in the sense that it's not real in itself, and it's not separate from creator. Creator is constantly alive and present within all of creation. The illusion is that we're separate. That's the illusion. Physical reality is simply a projection of the one experiencing itself in all things. And it's a choice we make. It's a choice we make because that's our nature as creative force. Interesting. Hema makes the observation that there are 33 participants on the call. So yes, so 33 is a master number representing Christ consciousness, or another word for Christ consciousness would be divine presence, unified presence. And what that means is that the four bodies we talked about earlier, the physical, etheric, mental, and emotional bodies, merge with the causal body, the soul body. And so our center of identity is no longer the personal self, but it's the unit of self. And at that point, we can join with any level of consciousness we choose. We can join with the consciousness of Gaia. We can join with the consciousness of the sun. We can join with a single species. We can join consciousness with whoever it is that we're encountering, that we're having a conversation with. And in this call, as we are connecting together as these 33 participants, we're joining consciousness together to experience the collective energy field that supports us all. So we are moving into divine union, which means entering into the drop, entering into that space of humanness with full divine consciousness. Yes, Pallavi is asking how to learn Ilahinur. Is it similar to meditation? And then Lisa is asking, are you speaking about incorporating more of our soul group into our awareness? Yes. Yes to Lisa. So we're incorporating more of our galactic soul, more of our oversoul, entering through our individual soul, and then communicating itself through our physical senses and through our nervous system to join with the body and consciousness of everything around us. So Ilahinur is this process. So the name means divine light. in Turkish or Arabic. And this particular work began for me when I was living in Turkey, which is one reason I was called to be in Turkey was the Sufi tradition. Besides the fact that it's such an ancient, beautiful land and people. And the Sufi tradition is about opening the heart, the mystic heart, the heart of all creation. And I remember the first year that I was there, there was a point when I was working with a small group of people, and we had this download of this enormous field of light. And we happened to be in communication with Ra at that point, who's the spirit of the sun, a vast interdimensional being. And we felt that presence entering. And what he was saying is that in many traditions in the past, as initiates, our work and our journey has been about entering into these awakened states, dissolving the personal self into the unified self. This is what an initiate is about. And in those days, so we're talking about maybe up to 5,000-6,000 years ago, it took a long time and was a long process of purification, of entering into the darkness represented by the human subconscious worlds, by confronting our fears and slowly, step by step, releasing that. And many of the initiations, such as the initiation in the Great Pyramid, the final initiation was about merging the physical body with the light body. So what would happen is that as the initiate was laying in the sarcophagus, for instance, and the pyramid was designed to access galactic frequencies from different star systems through certain shafts. Orion, Pleiades, Sirius, Alpha Draconis. These energies would then start working with the physical, emotional, mental bodies to transform them. Same thing that's happening here, by the way, but I'll get into that. So in this transformational process, the physical body would merge with the light body. And this was the first step towards immortality. At that point, the initiate became a master, an adept, an immortal. And there's many of them who are here still at this time, usually hidden away, usually not working directly with us unless there's a need for that or a call for that. Many of them are holding out in the Himalayas or the Andes, high mountains, because that's a space where there's not so much interference from the density of human consciousness. And they're working to support the evolution of Gaia and humanity. So what Ra was saying, back to Ilahinur, is that in those days, in the Tibetan, Buddhist, Egyptian, Vedic, Andean traditions, it took a long time because the magnetic field on the earth was very rigid. And what's happening now is as the magnetic field of the earth is weakening, and this is what Ra was saying, as the magnetic field of the earth weakens, there's a potential for a reorientation with the light body. Essentially what that means is that as the magnetic field drops, the connected, the 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 links that connect these 4 or 5 bodies start to weaken and break down, which means that we're not so fixed in old traditions, old paradigms, old belief systems, old emotional traumas, miasms. It starts to loosen up. And at that point, if we join our intention with divine forces, we can allow the soul, we can allow the oversoul and the galactic soul, the universal soul, to enter in through these 5 bodies to transform the physical body into a light body. So this was happening with us in this small group. And over time, we were taught also how to make this a matter of intention, more conscious. So rather than just waiting for grace, we actually work with the energetics of the physical body, different connections between the old brain, the new brain, the limbic system, the different nadis. There's a chakra behind the back of the head that's linked with unified global consciousness. And from that space, you can actually enter into galactic consciousness as well. It's a new chakra. This awareness first came for me when I was swimming with whales in Hawaii, off the west coast of the Big Island. And it was such a profound experience. And she taught me how to access the space and how to open up from there. And then Ra was continuing these teachings and showing us how to link up very consciously the limbic system, the prefrontal lobes, the right and left brain hemispheres, the different bodies, working with the upper world, the lower world, unifying them. So Ilahinur was the name given for this frequency of light, which we could also refer to as the unified light or the supramental force or galactic super waves. It just depends on what context we're looking at this. And through choice, through intention, we can access this. And as it moves through us, it begins to cleanse and purify the nadis, the kundalini channels, the heart, the brain, the mind, the senses. So it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Otherwise, we would not survive. But this is a process that's been going on for many years now. As we get closer and closer to the magnetic excursion or reversal, we're all going through this. As we receive more of these solar flares and these galactic currents, these cosmic rays, these energies are coming in through the lens of the soul and impacting the personal self. And to the extent that we're willing, open, surrendered to this process, it can happen very quickly. So like Ra was saying, we don't need to go through a long time and a whole series of initiations for this. The galactic superwaves are doing what needs to be done. The solar cosmic rays are participating in this journey. Gaia has invited us to participate in this evolution. And we've chosen this. Our souls have chosen this. We as a soul have chosen this. And that's what this work is about. So whether we're talking about Ilahinur, whether we're talking about the supramental descent, this is our work. And the more of us that can awaken and support Gaia in this, the easier it becomes for all of us. Okay, Connie is asking a difficult question, but do you feel maybe even the shift, or do you feel maybe when the shift of the 3 days of darkness will take place? Yeah, this is a very good question. And there's many dates that have been given for different events. And sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. If they don't happen, people get either seriously disappointed or seriously relieved, depending on what your perception is. The 3 days of darkness that Connie is talking about is basically this magnetic reversal. So what scientists have recognized by looking at previous cycles is that as the magnetic field weakens, there's an exponential process of decreasing magnetic intensity, and then it only takes a few hours or a few days for the final reversal or excursion to take place. So it may take some time to get to that 80-degree north latitude or south latitude point. It may take a few years to get to, say, 40, 45 degrees. And then suddenly, within 3 days, you can go through the entire process of reversal in a flash, just like that. So in many indigenous cultures, this was known as the 3 days of darkness. And I remember, when many people were speaking about the great shift of 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar and so on, I managed to go with a group of people to Guatemala and meet with some of the Mayan elders. And Don Alejandro Cirillo was one of them. And he was quite irritated, actually, by all this talk about the Mayan calendar and the end date of 2012. And he said, sorry, this is not what our prophecies have been about. Our major prophecy is about the 3 days of darkness. He said there's 13 prophecies that we have been given. 12 of them have come to pass already, which means that the 13th prophecy is imminent. And this 13th prophecy was about this 3 days of darkness. And he said it could be very literal, but it's not something to fear. When we don't understand something, our natural tendency is to go into fear. But he said this is something we've been waiting for a very long time with great eagerness. It's the culmination of our prophecies. It's the culmination of why we have chosen to be here. This is what our teachings are about. And these are the teachings that we offer to the world. So we're not talking about one specific end date, and that too dealing with linear time. He said we're talking about stepping into multidimensional time. You're stepping into multidimensional experience of time. And this is what the 3 days of darkness is about. So when the magnetic field collapses, like I said earlier, we're linking up the different bodies together. And as these bodies linked with the causal body, the soul body, then higher frequencies emanating from the soul, from the personal soul, from the oversoul, from the galactic soul, the universal soul, the self, they can all be channeled through. It's like a major download. And one other thing that is interesting, as the magnetic field weakens, what happens within the pineal gland, the third eye, is the activation of what's called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Now, what happens when a person leaves the physical body, what we call death? The heart stops. The Merkaba, which is the multidimensional field of light surrounding the physical body, collapses. And in the collapse of that Merkaba, there's an activation of DMT, which opens up doorways to the upper world, which then allows the soul to depart the physical body. The silver cord is cut, and our consciousness is no longer associated with the physical body. Our consciousness is still attached to the etheric body for a few days, and it's still attached to the emotional mental bodies operating in the astral world. Gradually, even that begins to lift up into the causal world, the realm of the soul. So that's when all of our life experiences, memories, thoughts, feelings, learnings get assimilated into the psychic being, soul consciousness. And then we choose at that point, okay, am I ready to step back into incarnation? Do I wish to go on to another realm? Whatever, your choice. But so we're talking about what happens when a person dies individually. The magnetic field collapses. It activates the pineal gland. It triggers DMT, which opens up doors of perception. Now imagine what happens when this takes place collectively. So the magnetic field of the entire planet collapses. This 3 days of darkness that, who was it, Connie was talking about. It triggers DMT collectively in every single person on this planet. Not just human, but also many other animals, mammals, who have a developed pineal gland. And perhaps other species as well. It may not be the activation of DMT in the pineal gland. It may be other electrical impulses, other, DNA codes. So this is when Gaia decides to incarnate or reincarnate into her next evolutionary frequency, these 12,000-year cycles. So these 3 days of darkness are the transition points within these 12,000-year spirals. It's where new information, galactic information, and divine light becomes available. New acts of creation can take place. So it's a very powerful time. And, I've been following the science behind this. How quickly are these magnetic fields collapsing? When can we expect these 3 days of darkness? And yes, we can, come to a close approximation, but ultimately, it's up to us. It's up to our collective consciousness. We decide. We are tuned in with Gaia. Gaia is tuned into the sun. The sun's tuned into Hunapku, the mother star of our galaxy. And it's a shared journey. We're part of something much bigger than a personal self or even a collective human self. So if we recognize this, as Don Alejandro was saying, this is such a beautiful, exciting, powerful moment of time that we have chosen to incarnate, to participate in. And for an advanced soul, there's no other time that you choose to be here. Been there, done that, it's boring. But these times of magnetic reversal, the 3 days of darkness, new potentials, new acts of creation, this is why we are here, to participate in that. Yeah, so Lisa is saying, has anyone noticed that when these changes come, your entire body vibrates and you can feel it physically? Yeah. So notice more and more of how this happens, especially during solar flares, times of eclipse, when there's massive bombardments of cosmic rays, also related to your own personal astrology. Or if you're doing, if you have a meditation practice, you might notice that there are cycles within that, or cycles within each day, as Kundalini travels through one of 3 different channels. And as it moves through the central channel, there's an activation of the descent and ascending energies. So this is happening more and more. As more light comes in, it's opening up spaces. But yeah, there's a proviso to this, which is that as more light enters into the body, into the psyche, it's also going to light up the dark. So wherever we've been holding resistance, our fears, our attachments, our conditioning, our stories, the old paradigm of duality, our attachment to limitation. We dread going outside of our familiar world because we're afraid of the unknown. The greatest unknown is what we call death. And it's not just death to the physical form, it's death to the ego, which, the ego is a beautiful structure. It exists in order to channel and embody the self. But when we become too attached to the framework of the ego, to the needs and requirements of the personal self, in exclusion to the greater life around us, then that becomes a miasm, a dense veil surrounding the heart, surrounding the personal self. And part of what's happening, part of what we're doing here, as the light comes in, we're releasing, we're purifying, we're clearing what is called hucha in the Andean tradition. We'll do a practice, we'll do an exercise to facilitate this before we end. And Lisa is also responding to Connie. The sun has increased solar activity lately. So does that mean it's close? Well, the cycles of the sun, there's 12,000-year cycles, there's 400-year cycles, there's 1,200-year cycles, and there's 22-year cycles. And that's just the ones that we've been tracking. We're going through, every 22 years, we go through a sine wave, a sunspot cycle. So we have a solar maximum, a solar minimum, and then another solar maximum and minimum, creating a single sine wave. There's also a grand solar cycle, which is a 400-year cycle. And we are now entering a grand solar minimum, which means that the next 3 or 4 solar cycles, meaning the next 30, 40 years, will become much colder than what we've experienced lately. So about the same as what we experienced 400 years ago. So we talk about the little ice age that happened in Europe at that time. So forget global warming. This is a new cycle that's beginning. There's also cycles of flaring, which are linked with magnetic forces entering from across the galactic sheet. So as the galactic wave ripples out from the center of the galaxy every 12,000 years, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond. You have these ripples, right? Known as the galactic sheet. And this, not galactic shit, galactic sheet passes through different star systems, enters into our own solar system, brings new waves of information, cosmic rays, gamma rays. It impacts on the sun. It generates cycles within the sun, and that leads to what's called a solar micronova, which is a huge event. In the past, the solar micronova it's like an explosion of the outer corona of the sun, where that radiation moves out through the entire solar system like a massive blast of energy. And whatever side of a planet is facing the sun could be completely fried. The other side of it could be flooded. So all the stories we have of, death and destruction, cataclysm through fire, through ice, through floods and so on, this has to do with the solar micronova. Depending on a state of consciousness, we don't have to experience this as a cataclysm. We can also simply ride this wave into high dimensional worlds. So this would be the next incarnation of Gaia. In other words, the 3 days of darkness would be like the womb, the tunnel of new birth, allowing Gaia to enter into new possibilities, new evolutionary possibilities. So if we meet this wave while we're still locked into third dimension, we could experience major catastrophes, cataclysms, destruction, extinction, just like we have in the past. The last time was, guess when Atlantis, the last phase of Atlantis went under the waves. I don't sense that this is going to happen this time, and it's partly because there's so much more light. It's because there's so many of us who've answered the call of Gaia, who've chosen to be here now to hold this light, to enter deeply into the inconscient, and to enter that birthing corridor, the birthing passage with and for Gaia. Okay, Minko is asking, how do we even know when it's due or be in total awareness? I think we all have a sense for this. There's a soul sense. To the extent that we are connected with that, we know. We might know that it's close, but not know exactly when. And maybe there's a reason for these things. Just like, we know when it's time, when it's close to time for a passage into death, but we may not know the exact moment, and there's a reason for that. Minka's also asking, is reincarnation a choice we can make post-death? Yes, of course. It's all choice. We can choose to come back in this world, another world. We can choose to come back, to learn certain life lessons, or we can continue those life lessons in another dimension, in a different world. Here in this physical dimension, apparently we learn faster, and we have an ability to manifest more profoundly, which is why many of us choose to be on physical worlds. They're more diverse, there's more multidimensionality here. And if we learn how to achieve mastery on this level, there's tremendous creative potential available to us. When I say us, I'm not talking about just the human self. I'm talking about the divine self operating through the human self. Lisa says, I'm very connected with the earth and the Divine Mother. And they say, is the earth's decision when the portals to the new earth opens? Yes, Gaia decides. The greatest impediment to evolution, ascension, is the number of people that look up that see the divine, I don't understand fully. Yeah, so we are part of Gaia. So we tend to think of Gaia as somehow separate from us just because that's the way our minds work. Everything outside us that's projected through us and beyond us is separate. And that's the way we perceive it. That's not the way that Gaia perceives it. For Gaia, it's all a oneness. It's all connected. All things are connected. We are all relatives. And so from her perspective, we are a part of her. We are participating. We are her nervous system. And so we know when that choice is made because we are part of her. She works through humanity as well. And we have a role to play in all this. So yes, it's a co-creation. So when we say Gaia decides, it's not Gaia outside of us, it's Gaia operating through us. We are operating through Gaia. There's no separateness the way our rational minds tend to perceive it. Yeah, and then the last mini ice age played a huge role in human events. It contributed to the French Revolution and so on. Absolutely. The Little Ice Age, as it was known in Europe, there were massive revolutions and wars and food shortages and riots, plagues, all of this as a result of an extreme cold spell that lasted for many, many decades, as a consequence of which there was despair, there was famine, there was the Black Plague, and so on and so on. There was a huge depopulation wave during that time. And it's possible that could happen today if we don't wake up in time. And so there's many, many scenarios playing themselves out right now. There's many different timelines that we're working with together simultaneously. And which timeline we choose, it may be a collective timeline. It may be something that we individually choose. It may be that there's soul tribes that take different timelines at different times. Yeah, so we will see. But it's a co-creation and it's a choice. Jayanti is asking, okay, there's another statement from Lisa. We need more people on the planet to wake up. She is waiting for her children. We are waking up, but sometimes it feels a bit slow. Jayanti, what's Gaia? Asking this at the cost of sounding silly. No silliness. Gaia is like the Greek name for the goddess of the earth. So Parvati is the Vedic name for the goddess of the earth. Pachamama is the Andean name. Native tribes had basically referred to her as the Earth Mother. The Australian Aborigines have a different name. I forget what that is now. So yes, it's the consciousness of the earth. So just like we have these 5 bodies, the physical, etheric, mental, emotional, and soul, so does this earth. So the physical body of the earth is obvious. We experience this with our physical senses. And then there's the emotional, mental bodies of the earth. So this is actually a personality structure that's awakening, just like we are awakening. The etheric body of the earth, the prana body of the earth, is linked with the sun, is linked with plasma waves extending across the universe. So that's why there's the new science of plasma cosmology, or the electric universe theory, which posits that everything is linked to everything across the universe through plasma, through these sheets of charged particles, protons, electrons, neutrons, no, not neutrons, protons, electrons, which have positive, negative charge. And this is also referred to as the fourth state of matter, not solid, not liquid, not gas, but plasma. So information can travel instantaneously across the universe through these fields of plasma. So the etheric body of the earth and our own etheric bodies are basically connected with plasma. So we have the potential to link up with everything through etheric bodies. So Gaia has her etheric body connected to the sun, connected to other planets in our solar system. It's a living, breathing, pulsing consciousness that's linked with fields of life all around us. And then she has a soul body, the causal body. Once we learn how to connect with the soul presence within ourselves, that automatically allows us to connect with the soul presence of the earth, the sun, every star system, our galaxy, as far out as we wish to go. So, is it the same as Brahman? It's a little different. I would say Gaia is the face of the cosmic mother, whereas Brahman is beyond time, beyond space, beyond creation. So Brahman is absolute reality. It's Satchitananda, infinite consciousness that is not dependent on anything outside of itself. That's self-existing. Whereas once the self passes through the veil of Maya, enters into creation, it participates in the creation of time and space, through which, and time and space is a field through which these oceans of plasma can then move through dimensional realities, experience different worlds, and finally create physical forms of reality. So it's a hierarchical process. And it takes, we can't talk about time because all this is taking place in a realm beyond linear time, but it's a process. So Brahman is still self-existent within all things. So it's beyond time and space and within time and space. So the heart of all things is Brahman. The individualized aspect of Brahman is Atman. So the individualized aspect of Atman, that is the spark of creation within the human form, that's the soul when it first enters into incarnation. And then as the soul evolves lifetime after lifetime, it grows, it matures. It's known as the psychic being. It's the causal body, which then decides to either reincarnate on this dimension or move on, or if it wishes to completely transcend time and space and re-enter into Brahman. I mean, Brahman is present anyway in all things, but here I'm talking about Brahman beyond all things. So for me, this is such an adventure, the remembering of who I am as the self, as Brahman, while participating fully as possible within this great adventure. And the more we can participate consciously, the more joyous, the more beautiful, and the more powerful our experiences. The ability to manifest, the ability to create, the ability to choose. We are not victims on this level of awareness. Nothing happens to us that's outside of our own choice, because we are not separate from anything outside of us. Everything that appears to be outside is a projection of everything that's inside. And when we enter into higher levels of the mind, as we reach towards that supramental consciousness, and as that supramental consciousness descends down into the activity of the brain, then this becomes our conscious reality as well. So Dwani is asking, aren't we contaminating Gaia with industries and injecting medicines and vaccines and plastics into our cells and the environment? Or is Gaia beyond physical causes? Yeah, so that's a good question. And I would say yes and yes. So look at our own bodies. We are constantly contaminating our physical bodies through GMO foods, through the chemicals in the soils, in the air, in the oceans, which we imbibe knowingly or unknowingly, just through our breath, just through our foods, just through our perceptions. This electrosmog that pervades the environment, we are receiving it into our nervous system. It's stultifying our awareness. And the same applies for Gaia as a physical body. But then if you realize that she is more than the physical, just like we as individual humans are more than the physical, the soul of Gaia is not affected by all this. And so it's multidimensional. And as we evolve into the next dimensional reality, as we pass through this 3 days of darkness, as we enter into the next cycle of evolution, the potential is that in a very short period of time, the physical body of the earth will also go through a huge transmutation, frequency shift. As the earth enters into a high dimensional world, it's like dropping layers of density and dropping a skin, dropping like a snake, releasing an old skin and entering into a new, experiencing itself anew. So these are not just linear events, they're actually dimensional in that sense. So Dwani continues, sorry, I'm a bit clueless. This is very interesting and new for me. Well, this is such an adventure for me too. It's taken me years and years and years to start putting these pieces together. And there's so much more. There's always so much more. And I think what's important is our willingness and our openness and our surrender to these forces of life all around us, and especially to the self operating through the soul that's our true self. Yeah, Lisa reminds us, yes, but she is endlessly recreating herself, so referring to the earth. Other societies have polluted the earth so long ago, and she has renewed herself so many times. Absolutely. It's so in a way, it's like if you're referring to the physical body of the earth, our physical bodies get polluted, we age, we get sick, we die. And then we let go of the physical body, we enter into or re-enter into the causal worlds. Then we choose to enter back into a physical body. We create an etheric body by projecting our mental, emotional consciousness into the womb of our mother, from which we then begin to evolve or develop as an embryo. The embryo gets impregnated with with what's called the vasanas from our psychic being, which, as the nervous system develops, becomes identified with the human self. So then we start to think, we start to feel, we start to experience things, at first it's with completely fresh new eyes. And then gradually it's like conditioning starts to enter into the picture. So it's the same with Earth. Gaia has gone through many cycles. So just because we are incredibly polluted does not mean that this is the end. There's no end. So from the cyclical perspective, there's no room for despair. But that means also that it gives us even more of a sense of urgency, because we know that this transition, this timing is critical. We are in this time of transition now. We are in this passage, the birth tunnel now. It's not going to be forever. And this is an opportunity that we are given. We can abort. Gaia can abort. I don't feel like that's her plan, but that's always a choice. But she is recreating herself and has constantly been recreating herself as a conscious, living, intelligent being. So we've been going for about an hour and a half. And what I'd like to do now is maybe switch gears a little bit and do a meditation. This particular meditation is about incarnating. It's about embodying the self. It's about the supramental descent. One thing, and this particular meditation comes from the Andean tradition, the Incas. So Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia. Before the Spanish invaders came, they were very highly attuned to the forces of the earth. They understood Gaia. They referred to her as Pachamama. They saw her as an aspect of the cosmic mother. And Pachamama is referring not just to the earth, but also to every body of life across the universe. So it's the body of the Great Mother. And what they experienced is that in the flow of the universe, there's no good or bad. There's no positive and negative. The idea of positive and negative is a human creation. It comes from our assumption, it comes from a belief system around separation or duality. But the way things are in nature, there's no positive and negative. It's simply one single flow of energy. When you block the energy, and humans have the capacity, as no other species on this earth, to block this energy, that creates what they call hucha. That is what creates the veil. And that's what allows our consciousness then to get solidified and narrowed down into limited functionality. If we can release that hucha and open to the flow, then we reconnect with the multidimensional self. So there's exercises to bring that sami, the flowing quality of the universe, through our bodies down to the earth. And then there's the reciprocity from the earth back to the sky. So reciprocity is also another aspect of the Inca tradition. They say that everything is reciprocal. So it's just like Newton with the second law of thermodynamics, where there's an action, there's a reaction. But in this case, it's not just in terms of physical laws, it's metaphysical laws as well. So, in other words, when there's a movement of energy from the sky, from the cosmos, down through our bodies, into the earth, into all the structures and layers and dimensions of the earth, there's a natural and spontaneous response. Not through our efforts. It's that law of reciprocity. You push something, you get pushed back. You channel the Sami downwards from the cosmos down to the earth. There's a response from the earth back to the sky. So this meditation that I will be offering is about learning how to create this reciprocal movement of energy. The movement of energy coming down is electrical. The movement of energy moving up is magnetic. And so the synchronization of these two fields creates an electromagnetic force. And remember, these electromagnetic fields is how we experience our subtle bodies. And so as these electromagnetic fields get engendered within the subtle bodies, that opens up a doorway to the subtle worlds and eventually to the causal realm, which the Hindus refer to as the Anandamaya Kosha, the body of bliss. This is the realm of the soul, or the Ba of the Egyptians, the higher astral worlds. And this is where we can then build a relationship with our multidimensional being. And it happens very spontaneously. So what we're doing in this meditation, first we are connecting with a bubble of light, extending about 6 feet out in all directions. And this bubble is the human force field. So it's the physical, etheric, emotional, and mental bodies. Then we connect with a window directly over the top of this bubble. And this window opens up to the sky. And when I say sky, I'm referring to the entire cosmos, the multidimensional universe, the self in all things. And we open to that just by intention, no effort. It's not about forcing or visualizing. Just open that window. You know, just like you opening the window of your room or the skylight and the sun pours in, just like that. The sun pours in, which is this highly refined electrical frequency of light. So it's like you're standing under a waterfall and just experiencing this cosmic river flowing through you. It goes all the way through these 4 bodies, this entire bubble, into the earth. Then there's a reciprocal action. You don't have to create another window below your feet. So because of the reciprocity, the magnetic energies from the earth, very nurturing, healing, nourishing, loving, they start moving up through every single cell within your physical body, all the way through your etheric, emotional, mental bodies, clearing any miasms, any hucha, any conditioning, any resistance, any pain, any fear. You know, it's a process, but that's what starts to happen. So the electrical frequencies start to release, and the magnetic frequencies start to rebuild. And as the electrical and magnetic energies flow back and forth, then your bubble begins to expand out. So these 4 bodies reach out to connect with the 5th body, the Anandamaya Kosha, the causal body. And that's how you touch the soul. That's how you experience yourself as the soul. That's how you shift your sense of presence from the personal self to soul, which is multidimensional. So it's not from trying to do anything. That's very important to understand. You're not trying to meditate here. All you're doing is you're opening that window with intention, allowing the universe to pour through. The earth responds. You develop this relationship between worlds, the upper worlds above and the lower worlds. So the upper world is the world of the spiritual dimensions, higher dimensions. The lower world is the world of nature, is the elemental spirits, is the connection with your roots going deep into the heart of the mother. It's your umbilical cord to the soul of Gaia. So that's a little bit of a explanation. So let's do this meditation together, and I'll guide you through this. So wherever you are, just give yourself a moment to become comfortable. Get in touch with your body, your breath. Keep your spine erect comfortably. And now become aware of this bubble of light that completely surrounds the physical body. Extends out about 6 feet or 2 meters in every direction. So it's like a luminous egg extending all the way around your body, embracing and including not just the physical body, but also the emotional and mental bodies, which are actual fields. They're not dense physical fields, so they don't have physical structure or shape or form, but they're fields close to the physical body and which link into the physical body through these etheric cords. So we refer to them as chakras, nadis, meridians, navis. This is the Kundalini system or the chi system that links all these bodies together. And all of this is part of the bubble. And now become aware of a window directly over the top of this bubble. So it's a circular window, quite wide. You can open this as wide as you wish. And as soon as you open this window, it's like a skylight. This enormous downpour of light starts pouring in. And we can call this Ilahinur also. We can call this the Supramental light. Comes in from across dimensions of creation and also beyond creation. Highly refined frequencies of electrical light. Notice how you perceive this. You might perceive a tingling, a vibrating, a pulsing at the top of your head, which starts to move all the way through and down. And as it starts to move through the bubble, it also begins to purify the hucha, the miasms, the density, the resistance, the fear, the traumas that we've been holding, not just in a single lifetime, but through generations, personal as well as collective. And it's a natural and spontaneous activity of this light. We don't need to know or understand which layers are coming up at what time. As the Sami pours in from that window down through the bubble, it's going through a process of clearing out hucha and releasing that into the earth. And the elementals within the earth receive this with great gratitude because that's their job, to transmute this hucha back into Sami, back into flow. So just experience this downpour for a while. And just notice what this electrical flow feels like. And all you need to do is keep that window wide open. That's it. No mantras, no efforts, no visualizations. Just opening that window over the top of the bubble. Notice what's happening with your body, what's happening with your breath, what's happening with your mind. And now remember what we said earlier about the reciprocity. So as this Sami, this electrical force, continues to move down through your feet, into the earth, through all the different layers of the earth, down to the very center of our planet, there's a response. There's a magnetic stream of light that starts pouring up like a fountain, up through your feet, up through every cell of your body, through the entire bubble, meaning through all these four bodies, and then up through that window to the sky. And this magnetic force is very, very nourishing, very, very healing, nurturing. It's the unconditional love of the mother. Feel your heart opening to this. Feel the deep silence as this force starts to move through each cell. Notice that this magnetic energy feels also very heavy. You might feel very heavy in terms of your connection with the earth. It's very grounding. It may be difficult for a while to move your body. It's like you become a mountain. Silent, vast mountain. And so these magnetic and electrical energies continue to move back and forth. And this creates a unified electromagnetic field. And notice what starts to happen spontaneously with this. The bubble expands, and you start moving out to connect with a fifth body of light, the causal body, the realm of the soul. It's all happening spontaneously. And as you connect with the soul presence, also called the Anandamaya Kosha, the body of bliss. You start entering into that great ocean, into that vastness, that oneness, that interconnectedness, that multidimensionality, which is what you are. You're moving past the illusion of the personal self. The shamans talk about opening doorways between worlds. And the doorway to the upper world and to the lower world happens spontaneously and simultaneously, so that you're no longer identified as a personal self alone. You recognize who you are as soul presence. You experience yourself in your deepest nature as infinite consciousness. All of this operating through the personal self, through the mental, emotional, and physical structures of your being. So your identity now is linked with the soul presence. And you continue to experience this presence radiating out further and further out from the physical body. This bubble continues to expand across the earth, across the oceans, across the mountains and the streams, across the continents. You merge with the entire body of Gaia. And you embrace the soul of Gaia. And you experience yourself as the soul of Gaia. Because at this level, the distinction between the personal, the planetary, galactic, universal is not as fixed as we've believed it to be. We're entering into realms of mind beyond the rational. We're entering into cellular levels of consciousness, where subatomic energies are awakening. We're entering into a field of plasma, where all things are linked together and all separation ends. So allow yourself to expand as far out as you wish. Once you experience yourself as the planetary self, continue moving out through the solar system. Entering into the consciousness of the sun and all the planets that make up our system, our star system. Expanding out beyond the boundaries of our star system into intergalactic space. Rapidly moving across the galaxy. until you begin to experience the stars as the living cells of your galactic body. Billions and billions of stars out there representing the cells of your galactic being. And expanding out even further across the galaxies, until every one of billions of galaxies are like cells within your cosmic body. Expanding out further and further and further out. Now you're reaching out and merging with the soul of the universe across all dimensions of time and space. And then beyond time and space into that great beyond, Brahman, unified consciousness, primordial being, infinite self. And here you experience that the entire physical universe is like a tiny pinprick within the self. This vastness of who you are, this presence, the supramental light. And all this is simultaneous. So as you're experiencing yourself as the self, beyond time, beyond space, and all these aspects of yourself within time and space, you're simultaneously experiencing yourself also as the universal self, as the galactic self, as your solar self, a planetary self, and as a human self. All these aspects of you are holographically linked together. That's what quantum reality is about. So as you tune into your physical body, an entire universe shows up. Each cell within your body is a star, a galaxy, a planet. So that boundary between the inside and the outside begins to disappear. There is no inside or outside. There's only the self reflecting and experiencing itself in all these dimensions and forms and aspects of itself. In this great play of life. I am that. So you can maintain this connection at all times as you wish by simply keeping that window open. And at first, the window will remain open for a while and then close by itself as the body learns to assimilate these higher vibrational fields. Gradually, you'll be able to keep it open for longer and longer, which means you can be more interdimensionally connected and aware. So we're nearing the 2-hour mark. So we should probably close pretty soon. But you might want to watch this. You can download this and watch this for yourself. It will be available. Juliana is going to mention exactly how you can access this. And there's also, remember, a lot of other seminars going on this next 5 days. So you might wish to participate in some of the others as well. I do have a Saturday meditation that you're also welcome to participate in. Please also check out my website, kiarawindrider.net. And there's several books also dealing with some of these thoughts. So I'm grateful for your participation, your presence. Oh, there's a comment from Duani. How many traditions have you studied? How did you get introduced to this learning? Actually, I found that this is the heart of so many traditions. It's so simple. We make it complex sometimes. When we enter into the ocean, allowing the ocean to enter through us, it becomes so simple. My book, Homo Luminous, goes deeper into some of these Inca practices, and it's available on Amazon. There's another book, Gaia Luminous, which goes into more of the context for this evolutionary process that we're going through. And yes, Minko, I do have a Facebook page, Kiara Windrider. So you're welcome to look me up. I'm pretty close to the, I'm right at the 5,000 mark, so you can follow me if I'm not directly accessible as a friend. My YouTube channel is Kiara Windrider also, so these Saturday meditations happen on that. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, European time, 12:30 p.m., so afternoon, Indian time. So it's 8 o'clock GMT. So you can just translate that every Saturday, unless I'm not doing it for some reason. Sometimes I'm traveling or some other things or forgetting. All right, so Juliana, anything you'd like to share to end this?
Yes. My last point is that we are raising some awareness around some COVID causes. So, as you know, this seminar was for free, and if you do want to consider giving to a few different causes that we propose, I'll put the link in the chat box. So check them out, and thank you very much. And that's there. So thank you, Kiara. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, my pleasure. Really.
Thank you, Kiara.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Yeah, so do check out that link. Go check out all the other workshops that are happening in the next 5 days. And hope to see you again.
See you later.
Thanks again.
Namaste.